Ethan Voss groaned as he slowly regained consciousness. His body felt heavy, his muscles stiff, and his head pounded like he had been hit by a truck. The last thing he remembered was the battle, a chaotic fight against unknown alien forces. He had been surrounded. His suit had been damaged. And then, darkness. Now he was lying in a medical bed, surrounded by a soft blue glow. The air smelled strangely clean, almost artificial. His arms and chest were covered in thin, transparent medical patches, and a warm sensation spread through his body. He tried to sit up, but a gentle hand pushed him back down. "Stay still," a calm, soothing voice said. Ethan turned his head and saw her. She was not human. The woman standing beside his bed had smooth violet skin, long silver hair that shimmered under the light, and deep golden eyes that studied him with sharp intelligence. She wore a sleek white medical uniform with glowing symbols running along her sleeves. Ethan recognized the language. Valkyrie script. He was in a Valkyrie medical bay. "You are safe, human," the woman said. "You suffered severe injuries, but we stabilized you." Ethan blinked, trying to focus. The Valkyrie were an advanced alien species, known for their medical expertise. If he was here, that meant the battle had ended, and he had somehow survived. "Where am I?" he asked, his throat dry. "You are aboard the Valkyrie vessel, Seraphis," she replied. "I am Dr. Celia Varun, your attending physician." She held up a small device and scanned his body, checking his vitals. The machine beeped softly, and she nodded in approval. "Your wounds are healing well. You were lucky," she added, her golden eyes flickering with something Ethan couldn't quite read. "Lucky?" Ethan scoffed, shifting slightly. His muscles still ached, but he had felt worse before. "I don't feel lucky." "You were found barely alive," Celia said, placing the scanner aside. "Your suit was critically damaged. If my team had arrived a few minutes later, you would not have survived." Ethan exhaled slowly. He had been close to death. Really close. "How long have I been out?" he asked. 3 days, Celia answered. Ethan frowned. That was longer than he expected. "And what happened to my unit? Did they make it?" Celia hesitated. "We have no records of your unit's survival." The words hit Ethan like a hammer. His team was gone. He clenched his fists, feeling a mix of anger and grief. He had fought beside those men and women, and now he was the only one left. Celia must have noticed his reaction because she took a step closer. "I am sorry," she said softly. "War takes too much from all of us." Ethan sighed. "Yeah, it does." A silence settled between them. Then, trying to push away the heavy feeling in his chest, he asked, "So what now? Am I a prisoner?" Celia shook her head. "No, the Valkyrie do not take prisoners of war. You are under medical care until you fully recover." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "And after that?" Celia didn't answer immediately. "That will depend on the High Council's decision. For now, focus on healing." Ethan exhaled through his nose, but he nodded. "Fine." Celia picked up a small, glass-like tablet and tapped on it. "Your body still needs rest. I will prepare a nutrient infusion to help stabilize your energy levels." As she turned to a nearby console, Ethan took the chance to observe her more closely. There was something strange about her. Unlike other Valkyrie he had encountered in the past, Celia didn't seem distant or overly formal. Her voice carried a warmth, and her expression, though professional, had a hint of curiosity. "Why are you helping me?" Ethan asked suddenly. Celia paused. She glanced at him, her golden eyes unreadable for a moment. Then she smiled faintly. "Because you are my patient." Something about the way she said it made Ethan's stomach tighten slightly. It wasn't just a clinical answer. There was something deeper there. Ethan wasn't sure why, but he had the feeling that Celia Varun wasn't just a doctor following protocol. She was watching him closely, maybe too closely. And for some reason, he wasn't sure if that was a good thing or a dangerous one. Ethan sat up slightly in the medical bed, his muscles aching, but his mind sharper than before. His body was healing faster than he expected, which meant Vakari medicine was no joke. But that wasn't the only thing on his mind. Dr. Celia Varuan stood by the medical console, her fingers gliding over glowing symbols on the holographic screen. The soft hum of the machines filled the silence between them. Ethan had been in enough battlefields to know when something felt off. Celia wasn't just another alien doctor doing her job. There was a strange energy in the air, a tension he couldn't quite name. She watched him closely, not just as a physician monitoring a patient, but as if she was studying him. "All right, human," she finally spoke, turning back to him. "You are healing well, but you still need another day before full movement is recommended." Ethan exhaled. "I feel fine." Celia's golden eyes narrowed slightly. "You feel fine because of the biogel patches. If you move too much, your muscles will tear again." Ethan smirked. "Sounds like a challenge." Celia raised an eyebrow. "Sounds like a foolish mistake." For the first time, Ethan saw the corner of her lips curve slightly. Not a full smile, but something close. He wasn't sure if she was amused or annoyed. Maybe both. "You are reckless," she added. "Yeah," Ethan admitted, "but I'm still alive, aren't I?" Celia sighed and picked up a small glass container filled with a glowing blue liquid. "Drink this," she instructed, handing it to him. Ethan eyed it suspiciously. "What is it?" "A nutrient booster," Celia said, tilting her head. "Or do humans prefer to starve?" Ethan chuckled. "I'll pass on starving." He took the container and swallowed the liquid. It was surprisingly smooth, with a cool, minty taste that spread through his body like a slow-burning fire. Almost immediately, he felt stronger, lighter, even. "Whoa!" He flexed his fingers. "That stuff works fast." Celia nodded, folding her arms. "Vakari medicine is efficient." Ethan glanced at her, debating whether to ask what had been bothering him. Finally, he decided to just say it. "You keep looking at me like I'm some kind of puzzle," he said. "Why?" Celia hesitated. For the first time, she didn't have a quick response. Then, after a moment, she walked closer and stopped at the foot of his bed. "Because you are different from what I expected." Ethan frowned. "Different how?" Celia studied him carefully. "Humans. Your kind is not known for surviving encounters like yours." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "Gee, thanks." Celia shook her head. "That is not what I mean. You should have died out there. Your injuries were severe. Even with our advanced healing, your body is responding faster than expected." Ethan shrugged. "Maybe humans are tougher than you thought." Celia's golden eyes locked onto his, something unreadable in them. "Perhaps." For a few seconds, neither of them spoke. The room felt warmer somehow, even though the temperature hadn't changed. Then, before Ethan could say anything else, the door to the medical bay slid open. A tall Vakari male stepped in. He was dressed in dark robes with a silver crest on his chest, a mark of high status. His sharp features and deep blue skin gave him an almost royal presence. Celia immediately stiffened. "Commander Vector," she greeted, her voice formal. Ethan sat up straighter. This guy was important. Vector's golden eyes scanned Ethan like a predator watching prey. "So, the human survives." Ethan narrowed his eyes. "Yeah, disappointed." Vector smirked, but there was no amusement in it. Not at all. "In fact, I find it fascinating." Celia stepped forward slightly, as if placing herself between the two. "Commander, he is still in recovery. This is not the time for—" "I did not come to interfere," Vector interrupted. "Only to observe." Ethan didn't like the way he said that. He had met enough high-ranking officers to know when someone had an agenda. Vector turned to Celia. "The council will want updates on his condition. Ensure you provide them." Celia nodded stiffly. "Of course." Vector lingered for a moment, his gaze flickering between Ethan and Celia. Then, without another word, he turned and left. The moment the door shut behind him, Ethan exhaled. That guy gives me bad vibes. Celia didn't respond immediately. Instead, she turned away, her posture unusually tense. Ethan frowned. "All right, Doc. What's going on? Who exactly is that guy?" Celia sighed. When she finally spoke, her voice was quieter. "Commander Vector is part of the Valkyrie High Council's inner circle. He oversees military matters." Ethan frowned. "Military? I thought this was just a medical ship." "It is," Celia said. "But not only that." Ethan's instincts buzzed. Something was being left unsaid. "You're not telling me everything," he said carefully. Celia looked at him for a long moment. Then, almost reluctantly, she said, "The Council believes you are unique. They want to know why you survived." Ethan's jaw tightened. "And what happens if they don't like the answer?" Celia didn't reply. And that silence told Ethan everything he needed to know. Ethan leaned back against the medical bed, his mind racing. The way Commander Vector had looked at him wasn't just curiosity. It was something more. A calculation. And Celia's silence told him what he already suspected. He was being watched. The quiet hum of the medical bay felt heavier now. Ethan exhaled, rubbing his face. "All right, Doc," he said. "You want to tell me what's really going on here?" Celia hesitated, then turned back to the medical console. The soft glow of holographic symbols reflected in her golden eyes. "It is complicated," she finally said. Ethan raised an eyebrow. "I'm a simple guy. Try me." She didn't respond right away. Instead, she tapped a few commands, and a holographic display appeared in the air, a detailed scan of his body. Ethan frowned. He didn't recognize half of what was shown, but one section stood out. His nervous system. It was glowing. "That's not normal, is it?" Ethan muttered. Celia finally met his gaze. "No, it is not." For a long moment, she just studied him, as if she was trying to decide how much to tell him. Then, finally, she spoke. "Your body is adapting." Ethan frowned. "Adapting to what?" "To Valkyrie medicine," Celia said carefully. "Faster than any human should." Ethan exhaled. "Great. So what does that mean?" "I heal a little faster. I feel a little stronger." Celia's gaze flickered. "It means more than that." She waved her hand, and the hologram shifted. It zoomed in on his brain activity. Ethan stiffened. Something about the display made him uneasy. There was movement, a subtle, pulsing rhythm that seemed to ripple through the scan. "This," Celia said, pointing, "should not be happening." Ethan narrowed his eyes. "Explain." Celia sighed. "Valkyrie medicine is designed to accelerate healing, yes, but it does not usually alter neural pathways. It should not be affecting your brain." Ethan tensed. "But it is." Celia nodded. "Yes, and that is why the Council is interested in you." Ethan clenched his fists. He didn't like being a science experiment. "So, what? They want to poke and prod me. See what makes me tick." Celia hesitated. "The Council does not take risks lightly. If they see you as a threat, they will." She stopped herself. Ethan's expression darkened. "They'll what, Celia?" She didn't answer, but she didn't have to. Ethan had been around enough military types to know how these things worked. If the Valkyrie Council thought he was dangerous, they wouldn't hesitate to remove the problem. Ethan swung his legs off the bed. His muscles still ached, but he ignored it. "Well, that's just great," he muttered. "I wake up on an alien ship, barely survive an attack, and now your leaders are deciding whether I should be breathing tomorrow." Celia's eyes flickered with something. Concern. Maybe even regret. "I will not let that happen," she said quietly. Ethan looked at her. For the first time, he realized she meant it. "You sound pretty sure about that," he said. Celia nodded. "Because I am." She turned away and tapped another set of commands into the console. The medical bay door sealed shut. Ethan raised an eyebrow. "What are you doing?" Celia didn't answer right away. Instead, she took a deep breath before turning back to him. "I am going to help you," she said, "but you must trust me." Ethan crossed his arms. "Trust is a two-way street, Doc." Celia exhaled. "I know." For a moment, the tension between them shifted. Ethan still didn't fully understand her motives, but he knew one thing for sure. She wasn't like the others. She wasn't looking at him like a test subject. She was looking at him like a person. "What's the plan?" Ethan finally asked. Celia's expression hardened. "First, we need to get you out of the medical bay." Ethan smirked. "Now you're speaking my language." She shook her head. "Do not get excited. This is dangerous. If the council realizes what I am doing, they will not be pleased." Ethan's grin faded. "And if they find out, what happens to you?" Celia hesitated. Then, very quietly, she said, "I will not be safe either." Ethan's jaw tightened. He didn't like that answer. But he also knew there wasn't another option. If he stayed here, the council would decide his fate, and he had never been the type to let someone else decide for him. Ethan nodded. "All right, Doc. Let's get moving." Celia's golden eyes met his. "Stay close, and do exactly as I say." Ethan smirked. "I'll try." Celia sighed. "That is not comforting." Ethan chuckled, but beneath the humor, he knew this was serious. Because now, it wasn't just about his survival. It was about hers too. Ethan followed Celia as she led him through the dimly lit corridors of the Valkyrie ship. The air smelled sterile, like metal and clean energy. His muscles still ached from his injuries, but he ignored the pain. He had bigger problems now. Celia moved quickly, her long white coat flowing behind her. Every few steps, she glanced back, making sure Ethan kept up. "Where exactly are we going?" Ethan whispered. She didn't slow down. "To the lower decks. Fewer patrols there." Ethan exhaled. "And then?" Celia hesitated before answering. "Then we find a way off this ship." Ethan nearly stopped in his tracks. "Hold on. Off this ship? You mean escape?" Celia nodded. Ethan frowned. "I thought you were just sneaking me out of the medical bay." But Ethan had a feeling. This was only the beginning. Ethan moved quickly, following Celia through the dim corridors of the Valkyrie ship. Every step felt heavier as the tension in his chest grew. They had a plan now. An old maintenance shuttle in the lower docks, but it was far from a guaranteed escape. Behind them, the ship remained eerily quiet. Too quiet. "I don't like this," Ethan muttered. Celia glanced at him. "Neither do I." She tapped a control panel on the wall, checking the ship's security status. A red warning flashed across the screen. "Security lockdown engage." Celia's hands tightened into fists. "They know." Ethan swore under his breath. "How much time do we have?" Celia's fingers flew across the screen, overriding the ship's internal systems. "Not long, but I can slow them down." Ethan watched as she disabled door locks, rerouted security drones, and created false alerts on different levels of the ship. It wouldn't stop the Valkyrie entirely, but it might buy them a few extra minutes. "Done," she said. "Let's go." They moved deeper into the ship, navigating through maintenance tunnels. The air smelled of oil and burnt circuits. Ethan had to crouch to fit through the tight spaces, his shoulders brushing against metal walls. At the end of the tunnel, Celia pressed her palm against another control panel. The hatch hissed open, revealing a wide hangar bay. The shuttle was there, a small old spacecraft, its surface covered in patches from years of repairs. It wasn't much, but it was their only option. Ethan grinned. "Well, it's not pretty, but I've flown worse." Celia sighed. "Let's hope it still works." They sprinted toward the shuttle, but before they could reach it, a loud alarm blared through the hangar. "Intruders detected. Seal the area." Metal doors slammed shut around them. Ethan spun around. Valkyrie soldiers poured into the hangar, their weapons drawn. Celia's eyes widened. They're here already? Ethan clenched his fists. Guess they weren't as slow as we thought. The lead Valkyrie soldier stepped forward, his voice cold. Surrender now, human. The council will decide your fate. Ethan scoffed. Yeah, no thanks. The soldier raised his weapon. Then you leave us no choice. Celia grabbed Ethan's arm. Get to the shuttle. The soldiers opened fire. Ethan dodged, rolling behind a metal crate as energy blasts tore through the floor where he had just stood. Sparks flew, and the hangar filled with the sound of gunfire. Celia pulled a small Valkyrie energy weapon from her coat and fired back. The blue light flashed across the room, forcing the soldiers to take cover. Where did you get that? Ethan shouted. She smirked. I may have borrowed it. Ethan grinned. Remind me never to leave you alone in my ship. He grabbed a metal rod from the floor. Not much of a weapon, but it would do. A soldier lunged toward him. Ethan sidestepped and swung the rod, knocking the soldier's weapon aside before delivering a strong punch. The soldier staggered back. Come on, Celia shouted. They sprinted toward the shuttle. Celia pressed the controls, and the hatch hissed open. Ethan jumped inside, sliding into the pilot's seat. His hands moved over the controls. The ship shuddered as power hummed through its old systems. Ethan flicked switches. Come on, come on. Celia ducked inside, sealing the hatch behind her. The shuttle's engines roared to life. The soldiers outside rushed forward, trying to stop them. Ethan grinned. Too late. He slammed a button. The shuttle blasted upward, lifting off the hangar floor. The force sent the soldiers sprawling backward. Alarms screamed across the ship as Ethan guided the shuttle toward the hangar doors. Hangar shields are still up. Celia yelled. We're trapped. Ethan growled. Not for long. He turned the ship toward the control tower at the far end of the hangar. Celia's eyes widened. What are you doing? Opening the door, Ethan said. He pushed the engines to full power. The shuttle shot forward, smashing through the control tower. Sparks exploded as the impact shattered the shield controls. The force field flickered, then vanished. Ethan whooped. Now we're free. Celia gripped the seat. If we don't get shot down first. The ship rocked as Valkyrie defense turrets locked onto them. Ethan gritted his teeth. Hold on. He spun the ship in a tight roll, dodging the first blasts. The second wave barely missed them. Celia's fingers danced over the control panel, diverting power to shields. Ethan pushed the engines harder. The hangar exit was just ahead. Another blast grazed their side. The shuttle shook violently. Celia gasped. We can't take another hit like that. Ethan narrowed his eyes. Then let's not get hit. He yanked the controls, sending the ship into a sharp dive. The sudden move confused the targeting systems. The turrets hesitated, just long enough. With a final burst of speed, the shuttle soared through the hangar doors and into open space. Ethan exhaled. We made it. Celia slumped in her seat, breathing hard. Barely. Behind them, the Valkyrie warship loomed in the distance, its defense systems still active. Celia checked the scanners. They're going to send pursuit ships after us. Ethan nodded. Then we better not stick around. He punched the thrusters, and the shuttle shot forward, disappearing into the stars. Ethan's hands gripped the shuttle's controls as the small ship raced through the void of space. Behind them, the massive Valkyrie warship loomed, its sleek, dark surface glowing with the hum of its powerful energy core. Celia's fingers moved swiftly over the navigation console, her sharp golden eyes scanning the readings. They've already launched pursuit ships. Ethan didn't have to check. The moment she said it, he saw the red blips on the radar. 3 Valkyrie fighters closing in fast. They really don't want us to leave, Ethan muttered. Celia didn't look up. I told you. You're too valuable to let go. Ethan sighed. Great. Always nice to feel appreciated. The shuttle shuddered as the first enemy blasts whizzed past their hull. The Valkyrie pilots were fast. Too fast. We can't outrun them like this, Celia warned. We need a plan. Ethan gritted his teeth, adjusting the controls. Then hold on, because I'm about to do something crazy. Celia barely had time to react before Ethan jerked the ship into a sharp dive. The small shuttle spun downward at full speed, heading toward a nearby asteroid field. Celia's eyes widened. Ethan, that's a death trap. Ethan grinned. Not if we're lucky. The first asteroid appeared ahead. A massive chunk of rock, spinning lazily in space. Ethan twisted the controls, skimming just beneath it. The Valkyrie ships followed closely, but their pilots hesitated. That's right, Ethan whispered. Come and get me. He dived deeper into the asteroid field, weaving between the floating debris. The shuttle rocked violently as Ethan narrowly avoided collision after collision. Behind them, the Valkyrie fighters hesitated. They weren't built for tight maneuvers like this. Celia clutched the armrest. We won't last long in here either. Ethan smirked. That's why we're not staying. He spotted a narrow tunnel in one of the larger asteroids, a small gap just wide enough for their shuttle. Celia's eyes flicked to the scanners. No way. That's too tight. Ethan's fingers tightened on the controls. Trust me. The ship raced toward the tunnel. The Valkyrie pilots hesitated for half a second. Just enough time. Ethan pushed the engines to full power. The shuttle shot through the tunnel, barely squeezing through the rocky passage. The Valkyrie ships tried to follow. Boom! The lead fighter clipped the entrance, smashing into the asteroid. A chain reaction of explosions erupted as debris tore through the other two ships. Celia flinched at the sound of the impact. They're gone. Ethan exhaled. Told you. No problem. Celia turned to him, shaking her head. You're insane. Ethan grinned. And yet, we're still alive. She sighed, checking the scanners. For now. But the Valkyrie warship is still out there. Ethan frowned. She was right. The warship wasn't moving, but it wasn't leaving either. They're waiting, he realized. They know we have to come out sometime. Celia's fingers flew across the console. I have an idea. Ethan raised an eyebrow. Should I be worried? She smirked. Probably. She pointed at the screen. There's a gas giant nearby. If we dive into its atmosphere, the interference might block their sensors. Ethan stared at the readings. The planet's atmosphere was thick, stormy, and unpredictable. Dangerous, he said. Celia nodded, but not as dangerous as staying here. Ethan sighed. All right, let's do it. He angled the shuttle toward the massive planet, pushing the engines harder. Behind them, the Valkyrie warship finally moved, scanning the area. They didn't know where Ethan's ship was yet, but they were still searching. We have to hurry, Celia urged. The shuttle dove into the gas giant's upper atmosphere. Immediately, the ship shook violently. The thick clouds swirled around them, lightning cracking in the distance. Shields holding? Ethan asked. Celia's expression was tense. For now. They sank deeper into the atmosphere, disappearing into the storm. Ethan checked the radar. The Valkyrie ship wasn't following. Celia let out a breath. It worked. Their scanners can't track us in here. Ethan relaxed slightly. Then I guess we have a moment to breathe. Celia leaned back in her seat, her shoulders finally unwinding. For now. Ethan nodded. But we still need to figure out where to go next. She looked at him, her expression serious. I might know someone who can help us, but we'll have to get off this planet first. Ethan sighed. Of course we do. He glanced out the window. The storm outside raged on, but for now, they were safe. For now. The storm around the shuttle raged violently. Thick, swirling clouds flashed with lightning, and powerful winds shook the small craft. Ethan gripped the controls tightly, trying to keep the ship steady. Celia checked the scanners. The Valkyrie warship isn't moving. They still don't know where we are. Ethan exhaled. Good. But we can't hide here forever. We need a plan. Celia's golden eyes flicked to him. I have one. Ethan raised an eyebrow. Should I be worried? She smirked. Definitely. She tapped the console, bringing up a holographic map. I know a place where we can go. A hidden colony, one that even the Valkyrie don't know about. Ethan's interest piqued. And they'll help us. Celia hesitated. They owe me a favor, but first, we need to escape this storm. Ethan sighed, adjusting the controls. All right, hold on tight. He pulled the ship upward, pushing the engines to full power. The shuttle shook violently, but Ethan gritted his teeth and kept going. Suddenly, a massive bolt of lightning struck the hull. The ship jerked wildly. Alarms blared across the control panel. Engines are failing. Celia shouted. Ethan fought the controls. Come on, girl. Hold together. The shuttle broke through the thick clouds, emerging above the storm. But now, the Valkyrie warship was right in front of them. Celia's eyes widened. They found us. Ethan didn't hesitate. Then we fight. He swerved the ship just as the warship opened fire. Bright blue energy blasts streaked past them, missing by inches. Ethan dove downward, but the Valkyrie fighters were already launching. Celia's hands moved swiftly over the console. I can reroute power to shields, but we won't last long. Ethan nodded. Then we end this quick. He checked the scanner. The warship's energy core was exposed. If we hit that core, Ethan said, we can disable them long enough to escape. Celia hesitated. That's risky. Ethan smirked. You got a better idea. She exhaled. Fine. But we only have one shot. Ethan spun the shuttle around and charged straight at the warship. The enemy fighters closed in, firing rapidly. The shuttle shook violently as blasts hit the shields. We're not gonna make it, Celia warned. Ethan's eyes locked onto the target. Yes, we are. He diverted all power to the engines, pushing the ship beyond its limit. The warship's weapons charged up, ready to fire. Now, Ethan shouted. Celia fired the ship's last missiles. The explosions erupted across the warship's core. Bright energy surged through the vessel, and systems overloaded. The massive warship flickered with sparks, its engines shutting down. The enemy fighters stopped moving, their control systems disabled. Ethan didn't wait. He punched the thrusters, sending the shuttle soaring into hyperspace. As the stars blurred around them, Celia slumped in her seat. We did it, she breathed. Ethan exhaled, relaxing for the first time. Yeah, we did. She turned to him, a small smile playing on her lips. Not bad for a human. Ethan chuckled. Not bad for an alien nurse. Celia laughed softly. Looks like you're stuck with me now. Ethan grinned. I think I'm okay with that. As the ship sped toward their new future, one thing was certain. This was just the beginning.